The dust of Salvation Creek settled around Marguerite Laurent's worn boots as she stood before the last building on Main Street. Her fingers trembled against the small wooden box she clutched. Inside, 3 precious pieces of honeyed caramel, the final remnants of her confectionery shop in San Francisco. Everything else was gone. The fire had taken her livelihood. Her late husband's debts had taken her dignity. And the brutal collectors had taken everything but the clothes on her back and this box. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. The stagecoach had deposited her in this God-forsaken Wyoming town, with nothing but desperate hope and the address of a distant cousin who, upon her arrival, turned out to have moved east 6 months prior. Now, as the sun bled orange across the prairie, Marguerite found herself staring at a rough-hewn sign, "Callahan Ranch, hands needed." Before we continue with Marguerite's story, I'd love to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and give this video a like. Your support truly matters and motivates us to bring you more quality storytelling like this. I'm also curious, where are you listening from today? Now, let's return to our tale. The ranch house loomed before her, solid and weathered like the man who emerged from its shadow. Cole Callahan stood 6'3" of muscle and sun-darkened skin, his shoulders broad enough to block the dying light. Dark hair touched his collar, and eyes the color of storm clouds assessed her with an intensity that made her breath catch. A jagged scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, a story written in violence that somehow made him more striking than handsome. "Lost, ma'am?" His voice was gravel and honey, the kind that commanded attention without raising volume. Marguerite straightened her spine despite her exhaustion. "I'm seeking employment, sir. I can cook, clean, manage accounts." "Don't need a housekeeper." He moved a step past her, then paused, his gaze dropping to the box she held like a lifeline. "What's that?" Heat flushed her cheeks. "Nothing of consequence." "Doesn't look like nothing." He waited, patient as stone. "Confections, caramels." The admission tasted bitter. "I thought perhaps I could trade them for a meal or shelter for one night." Something shifted in those gray eyes, not pity, but understanding that cut deeper. He stepped closer, and she caught the scent of leather and sage, and something indefinably masculine that made her pulse quicken despite her circumstances. "Open it." Her fingers fumbled with the latch. Inside, 3 perfect squares of golden caramel gleamed in the fading light, each one wrapped in wax paper she'd saved from better days. Cole reached for one, and she jerked the box back instinctively. "Promise you'll taste it slowly?" The words escaped before she could stop them. Desperate and broken, she was surrendering the last beautiful thing she'd created, and somehow that felt more vulnerable than offering her labor. Cole's hands stilled. Then, with a gentleness that contradicted his rough exterior, he took a single piece. His calloused fingers brushed hers. Brief, electric, he unwrapped the caramel with surprising care and placed it on his tongue. She watched his jaw work, saw his eyes close briefly. When they opened again, something raw flickered there. "Sweet Jesus," he breathed. Then, before she could process the intensity of his reaction, he reached for the box, not to take more, but to close it firmly. "Gold isn't what we need here, but a woman who can make something this perfect from sugar and cream?" He paused, and the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "That's valuable." "I don't understand." "You'll work for your keep. Cooking for the hands, making whatever confections you can manage with what we've got. Winter's coming. Men work harder with something sweet to look forward to. Marguerite stood frozen, certain she'd misheard. Just like that? You don't even know me. Know enough. He gestured toward the darkening prairie. Know you've been through hell. Know you're too proud to beg. Know you could have eaten those yourself, but you're trying to trade them instead. His gaze held hers. Know that anyone who can create something that beautiful hasn't lost what matters. You coming or not? Dinner's in an hour, and Maria, my cook, is threatening to quit if I don't find her help. The first sob caught in her throat. She swallowed it down, lifted her chin, and followed Cole Callahan toward the warm light spilling from his ranch house windows. The kitchen was larger than her entire San Francisco apartment had been, all rough timber and cast iron, with strings of dried peppers hanging from the rafters, and a massive stove that radiated heat like a benevolent dragon. Maria, a weathered Mexican woman, with kind eyes and hands that moved like birds, embraced Marguerite before she'd even set down her box. Finally, someone who understands food is love, see? Maria pressed a bowl of stew into her hands. Eat first, work after. You look like death's distant cousin. The food was simple: beef, potatoes, carrots, and rich broth, but Marguerite devoured it like a woman starving, which she was. Cole watched from the doorway, not speaking, just bearing witness to her desperation, with something like respect in his eyes. When she finally set down the empty bowl, Maria clucked approvingly. Good, now you'll sleep. Tomorrow we cook. I can work tonight. No. Cole's voice cut through her protest. You'll rest. That's an order, not a request. She wanted to argue, but exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. He led her to the bunkhouse, to a small room with a narrow bed, clean sheets, and a window overlooking endless prairie. It was the most beautiful thing she'd seen in months. Lock the door, he said quietly. No one here will bother you, but you've earned the right to feel safe. After he left, Marguerite did lock the door. Then she collapsed onto the bed and wept. Great shuddering sobs that tore through her chest. For her dead husband, for her lost shop, for the violation of having nothing left. And strangely, for the unexpected mercy of a scarred rancher who tasted her caramel like it was salvation itself. The days that followed fell into a rhythm that slowly mended something broken inside her. She rose before dawn to help Maria prepare breakfast for the ranch hands. 12 men who worked Cole's 5,000 acres of cattle and grassland. They were rough, weathered, but respectful, tipping their hats and murmuring, "Ma'am," when she served their plates. Cole ate with them, but his attention rarely left Marguerite. She felt his gaze like heat against her skin, not predatory, but assessing, as if he was trying to solve a puzzle. On the third day, he approached her as she kneaded dough for biscuits. Need to teach you to ride. She paused, flour dusting her forearms. I beg your pardon? Can't have you stranded if something happens. Everyone on this ranch knows how to handle a horse. I assure you, I'm perfectly content in the kitchen. Wasn't a request, but his tone was gentle. Besides, you need to see what you're part of now. This land, it's brutal and beautiful. You should know it. That afternoon, he brought her to the corral, where a dappled mare waited, saddled and patient. Marguerite stared at the animal with undisguised terror. She's enormous. She's gentle. Name's Clover. Cole stroked the mare's neck with a tenderness that made Marguerite's chest tighten. "Come here." She approached on trembling legs. Cole moved behind her, his chest a wall of heat at her back, his hands settling on her waist to lift her toward the stirrup. The contact sent electricity through her body. The first time a man had touched her since her husband's death, and it felt nothing like those passionless embraces. "Easy," Cole murmured, and she wasn't sure if he was talking to her or the horse. "Left foot in the stirrup. I've got you." He lifted her effortlessly onto Clover's back, and suddenly she was too high, too exposed, the ground impossibly far away. Panic clawed at her throat. I can't." Cole's hand covered hers where it gripped the saddle horn. "Breathe. You're safe. I won't let you fall." His certainty steadied her. Slowly, her death grip loosened. Good. He kept one hand on her calf, grounding her. Now, reins like this, gentle. She'll respond to the lightest touch. For an hour, he led Clover in slow circles around the corral, teaching Marguerite the basics of posture and control. His patience was infinite, his instructions clear, and when she finally managed to guide the mare independently for a full circuit, his smile was like sunrise. "Knew you had steel in you," he said simply. That night, exhausted and exhilarated, Marguerite asked Maria about their employer. "Cole?" Maria's hands never stopped moving, rolling tortillas with practiced ease. "Good man. Hard man. Lost his wife 4 years back. Influenza took her when she was carrying their first child. He blamed himself, though there was nothing to be done. Made a promise at her grave that he'd never marry again, never subject another woman to this harsh life." The information settled in Marguerite's chest like a stone. He must have loved her very much. But love like that, it can trap a man, make him forget he's still living. Maria's dark eyes fixed on her. "Maybe you both need reminding." Marguerite said nothing, but that night in her small room, she thought about scars, the ones that marked skin and the ones that marked souls. The weeks bled into October. Marguerite's hands, soft from city life, grew calloused from work. She learned to churn butter, to preserve vegetables, to manage the chaos of feeding 12 hungry men 3 times daily. But it was her confections that became legendary. With Maria's help, she transformed the ranch's simple ingredients into small miracles. Caramels infused with wild sage honey, peppermint creams made from plants she foraged in the creek bed, fudge so rich it made grown men close their eyes in reverence. Cole never asked for special treatment, but she noticed he always took the last piece, savoring it slowly, the way she'd begged him to that first desperate night. Sometimes she'd catch him watching her work, something unreadable in those storm-gray eyes. One evening, as she rolled truffles in cocoa powder, he appeared in the kitchen doorway. The hands had retired to the bunkhouse, and Maria had gone to visit her daughter in town. They were alone for the first time since that first day. "Need to talk to you about payment," he said. Marguerite's hands stilled. She'd been so focused on proving her worth that she hadn't thought about wages. "Of course. You're doing the work of 2 people. It's not right that you're just getting room and board." He pulled an envelope from his vest pocket, setting it on the flour-dusted table. "This is what you've earned. Fair market rate for a cook and confectioner." She opened it with trembling fingers. The amount inside made her gasp. More money than she'd seen in a year. "This is too much. It's what you're worth." He moved closer, and suddenly the kitchen felt very small. "Question is, what are you going to do with it?" I don't know. Save it. Perhaps one day open another shop. Or you could stay." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Marguerite's heart hammered against her ribs. "Mr. Callahan." "Cole. Just Cole." His hand lifted almost unconsciously to touch her cheek. He stopped himself an inch from contact, his jaw tightening. "Sorry. Shouldn't have. Why did you really hire me?" The question burst from her. "That first day, you didn't need a confectioner. You said yourself you didn't need a housekeeper. So why?" His eyes held hers with painful honesty. "Because when I tasted what you made, I remembered what it felt like to want something, to savor something. I'd forgotten that. Been dead inside so long I stopped noticing." His voice dropped to a rasp. "You brought sweetness back to this place, not just in the food, in everything." "Cole," her voice broke on his name. "I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "Just wanted you to know. You're not just an employee here. You're—" He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "You matter. To this ranch. To me." Before she could respond, the sound of approaching horses shattered the moment. Multiple riders, moving fast. Cole's entire demeanor shifted, his body coiling with tension. "Get to your room. Lock the door." "What's happening?" "Now, Marguerite." The command in his voice brooked no argument. She fled to the bunkhouse as Cole strode outside, his hand settling on the revolver at his hip. Through the window, she watched 5 men dismount in the yard. Even in the darkness, she could see their intent. Hard faces, weapons prominently displayed. Her blood turned to ice when she recognized the man leading them. Harrison Blackwood, her late husband's business partner, the man who tried to claim her as settlement for the debts. "Where is she, Callahan?" Blackwood's voice carried across the yard. "No, you've got Marguerite Laurent here. She belongs to me." "Woman doesn't belong to anyone." Cole's voice was deadly calm. "You're trespassing. Suggest you leave. Not without what's mine. Her husband owed me $15,000. She's going to work it off, one way or another." Marguerite's hands flew to her mouth, stifling a scream. She'd known Blackwood was pursuing her, but she'd hoped distance would deter him. She'd been wrong. "Only thing you're getting here is a bullet if you don't mount up." Cole's hand never moved from his weapon. "She's under my protection now." "Your protection?" Blackwood laughed, ugly and mean. "You're one man, Callahan." "I've got 4 guns here. Do the math. You've got 4 guns. I've got 12 men in that bunkhouse who'll tear through you like paper." Cole's voice carried absolute certainty. "And I personally guarantee none of you will make it off this property breathing if you touch her." A beat of silence. Then, impossibly, Marguerite heard herself moving. Before she could think, she was outside, standing between Cole and Blackwood. "No." Her voice shook, but held firm. "No more violence because of me." "Marguerite, get back inside," Cole growled. "I'll go with you," she told Blackwood, and the words tasted like poison. "Just leave them alone." "The hell you will." Cole's hand wrapped around her wrist, pulling her behind him. "She's not going anywhere." "She doesn't have a choice." "There's always a choice." Cole's other hand moved with lightning speed, his revolver clearing leather before Blackwood could blink. "And she's choosing to stay. You got a problem with that? We settle it now." The night exploded into chaos. Blackwood's men went for their weapons. Cole fired twice, precise, controlled shots that knocked guns from hands without killing. The bunkhouse door crashed open as the ranch hands poured out, armed and furious at the intrusion. But Blackwood was faster than he looked. While everyone focused on his men, he lunged for Marguerite, grabbing her around the throat and pressing cold steel against her temple. Everyone stops or she dies. The Cole stood 10 feet away, his weapon trained on Blackwood, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. Let her go. Each word was a blade. Whatever you think she owes you, it's not worth dying over. She owes me everything. Her husband promised. Her husband's dead. Debts died with him. Not how I see it. Blackwood's grip tightened, making black spots dance in Marguerite's vision. She comes with me, or I paint this yard with her brains. Time seemed to stretch. Marguerite saw Cole's finger on the trigger, saw the calculation in his eyes. Could he take the shot without hitting her? The math was impossible. So she made her own choice. She went limp in Blackwood's grip, dead weight that threw him off balance. As he stumbled, she drove her elbow backward into his gut with every ounce of strength she possessed. The gun discharged, a deafening crack, but the bullet went wild, and then Cole was moving. He crossed the distance in 2 strides, his fist connecting with Blackwood's jaw with a sound like splitting wood. The man went down hard, unconscious before he hit the dirt. The remaining men, faced with 12 armed cowboys and their employer's defeat, raised their hands in surrender. Cole's hands were on Marguerite instantly, turning her face toward the light, checking for injury with frantic thoroughness. "Did he hurt you? Marguerite, talk to me." "I'm fine." But she wasn't. Reaction hit her like a wave, and suddenly she was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come outside. I almost got you killed." "You saved yourself." His hands cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You didn't wait for rescue. You fought." "I was so scared." Fear doesn't mean weakness. It means you're brave enough to act despite it. He pulled her against his chest, and she went willingly, burrowing into his warmth. His heart thundered against her ear, as wild as her own. "Christ, Marguerite, when he had that gun to your head, He didn't finish. Didn't need to." She heard everything in the tremor that ran through his massive frame. The hands hauled Blackwood and his men away, promising the sheriff would handle them come morning. Maria appeared with blankets and hot coffee, clucking over Marguerite like a mother hen. But it was Cole who stayed close, his presence a solid wall between her and the world. Later, when the ranch finally settled into uneasy sleep, Marguerite found she couldn't rest. Her body ached with residual adrenaline, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw Blackwood's face. A soft knock at her door made her jump. "It's me," Cole's voice rumbled through the wood. "Just checking you're all right." She opened the door. He stood in the threshold, still fully dressed, looking like he hadn't even attempted sleep. "Can't stop thinking about it," he admitted roughly. "Seeing him touch you, knowing I almost lost." He stopped, jaw clenching. "Sorry, shouldn't burden you with this." "Cole," she reached for his hand without thinking, and his fingers closed around hers with desperate strength. "Come in, please." He hesitated, propriety warring with need. Then he stepped inside, and she closed the door behind him. They stood in the small room, hands clasped, breathing each other's air. The lamp cast shadows that made him look carved from bronze and darkness. "I made a promise," he said quietly, "after Catherine died. Swore I'd never love another woman, never put anyone through this life again. It's too hard, too dangerous. Tonight proved that. Tonight proved I can handle danger." She stepped closer, drawn by something stronger than reason. "Cole, I've been dead too. My husband was kind but distant. Our marriage was arrangement, not passion. I survived, but I didn't live. Not until I came here." Marguerite, Her name was a warning and a plea. You asked me to promise, to taste slowly. She lifted her free hand to his scarred face, tracing the mark with gentle fingers. Let me taste you slowly. Let me learn all the bitter and sweet of you, not because I need saving, but because I choose this, because I choose you. He shuddered under her touch, his careful control fracturing. I'm not gentle. I'm broken and hard, and I'll disappoint you. You're strong enough to show weakness. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen. She rose on her toes, her lips a breath from his. Kiss me, Cole Callahan. Make me feel alive. He surrendered with a sound like a man dying of thirst, finding water. His mouth claimed hers with careful intensity. His kiss both question and answer. She tasted coffee and desperation and 4 years of denied hunger. His hands spanned her waist, lifting her effortlessly. Her legs wrapped around him instinctively as he carried her to the bed, laying her down with reverence that made her throat tight. Go slow, she whispered, echoing that first desperate plea. It hurts to hope again. I'll die before I hurt you. He settled beside her, his weight dipping the mattress. Tell me if you want me to stop. Don't you dare stop. They moved together in the lamplight, stripping away not just clothing, but every defense they'd built against the world. His hands traced her curves with wonder, as if memorizing scripture. Her fingers explored the landscape of scars that mapped his chest. Stories of violence survived, of a life lived hard. When he hesitated at her remaining undergarments, she guided his hands with hers, showing him she was certain. His gray eyes held hers, asking permission at every stage. His control iron strong, despite the need she felt trembling through his frame. You're not property, he whispered against her throat. You're a miracle. She arched into him, gasping as their bodies finally aligned. The first moment of union stole her breath, not with pain, but with rightness. He moved carefully, watching her face, learning her responses with the same patience he'd shown teaching her to ride. Together, she breathed, and he echoed it like a vow. Together. They found their rhythm in the darkness, two broken people learning to move as one. When release crashed through her, she cried out his name, and he followed seconds later, burying his face in her neck and shuddering with the force of surrender. After, they lay tangled in sheets and limbs, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. That promise I made to Catherine, he said quietly. It wasn't about honor. It was about fear, being afraid to risk my heart again. And now? Now, I'm more afraid of waking up one day and realizing I let you slip away. He turned to face her, his eyes serious in the dying lamplight. Marry me, Marguerite. Not because you need protection or I need a cook. Because I love you. Because every sweet thing I taste makes me think of you. Because when I almost lost you tonight, I knew I'd been lying to myself. Tears tracked down her temples. That's the most beautiful proposal I've ever heard. That a yes? That's a hell yes. She pulled him down for another kiss, this one flavored with joy instead of desperation. On one condition, name it. We get married right here on this ranch, with your people watching, and I make the wedding cake, the most elaborate, beautiful confection anyone's ever seen. Because I'm not just a survivor anymore. I'm a woman who creates beauty, and I want everyone to know it. His laugh was pure warmth. Deal, though I reserve the right to devour you, like a starving man devouring something sweet. I'm counting on it. They married 3 weeks later under endless Wyoming sky, with Maria weeping happy tears and the ranch hands standing witness in their cleanest shirts. Marguerite wore a simple dress the color of cream, but she glowed brighter than gold. The cake was a masterpiece, 3 tiers of butter and sugar and wild honey, decorated with crystallized flowers she'd preserved from the prairie. When Cole fed her the first bite, his eyes held such love that she felt her heart might burst. "Promise you'll taste it slowly?" she whispered, echoing that first desperate night. He kissed her instead of answering, sweet and deep and thorough, and the assembled crowd cheered. Later, as they danced in the barn while Maria's husband played fiddle, Cole pulled her close. "Thank you," he murmured against her hair. "For what? For showing me sweetness isn't weakness, for being strong enough to let me be weak, for choosing this hard, beautiful life with me. Thank you for seeing me as a person, not property." She looked up at him, this scarred, beautiful man who'd saved her by letting her save herself. "For tasting slowly, for devouring me completely." His grin was wicked. "Oh, darling, I'm just getting started." 5 years later, the Callahan Ranch thrived. Marguerite's confections were shipped as far as Denver, her business a triumph that she ran with Cole's full support. They had 2 children, a fierce daughter who could ride before she could walk, and a son who followed his mother around the kitchen like a devoted shadow. On quiet nights, after the children slept, Cole and Marguerite would sit on their porch overlooking the prairie, and he'd still ask her to make him something sweet. Not because he was hungry, but because watching her create beauty had become his favorite sight in all the world. She'd hand him a caramel, watching as he savored it slowly, and she'd remember the desperate woman who'd offered her last treasures to a stranger. Remember the scarred cowboy who'd seen past her desperation to the strength beneath. "What are you thinking?" he'd ask, catching her smile. "That I was wrong that first day." About what? Gold was never what you needed. But sweetness? She kissed him, tasting sugar and coffee and home. "Turns out we both needed that." He pulled her close, his hand settling possessively over her heart. "Best taste of my life." And in the vast Wyoming darkness, under stars that had witnessed countless heartbreaks and triumphs, their love proved that even in the harshest landscape, sweetness could not only survive, it could flourish. The winter of 1878 arrived with brutal efficiency, transforming the Wyoming landscape into a kingdom of white and gray. Snow piled in drifts higher than a man's head, and the wind howled through the ranch like a living thing searching for weakness. Marguerite stood at the kitchen window, watching Cole and the hands struggle to break ice on the water troughs. Even from this distance, she could see the strain in their movements, the way the cold seeped into bones and made every task twice as hard. "Getting worse," Maria commented, stirring a massive pot of stew. The older woman's arthritis had flared with the cold, and Marguerite had taken on more of the heavy work. "Haven't seen a winter this fierce in 10 years. How much longer will it last?" "Could be weeks, could be months." Maria's dark eyes were troubled. "Supplies are running low. Cole will need to make a run to town soon, but the passes are dangerous." That evening, as Marguerite served dinner to exhausted men, she noticed Cole barely touched his food. His eyes kept drifting to the window, calculating, worrying. "We need to talk," he said quietly when the meal ended and they were alone in the kitchen. She dried her hands on her apron, heart sinking at his tone. "What's wrong?" "Cattle are dying. Lost 20 head yesterday, frozen where they stood." He rubbed a hand over his face, and she saw the weight of responsibility etched in every line. Feed's running out faster than expected. We've got maybe 3 weeks of supplies for the men, less for the livestock. What can we do? I need to take a wagon to Cheyenne. Bigger town, better suppliers. But it's a 4-day journey each way, and the weather? He stopped, jaw tightening. It's dangerous. But if I don't go, we'll lose everything. Then we go together. Absolutely not. His response was immediate and forceful. You stay here where it's safe. Safe? She laughed without humor. Cole, I'm your wife. Where you go, I go. Besides, you'll need someone to help negotiate with suppliers. I ran a business, remember? I know how to get the best prices. Marguerite? Don't Marguerite me. She planted her hands on her hips. A gesture he'd learned meant she was immovable. You're taking supplies to sell, my confections included. I should be there to represent my own work. And frankly, you need me. They argued for an hour, his protective instincts warring with the logic of her points. Finally, exhausted, and knowing she was right, he surrendered. We leave at first light, but you follow my lead. Understand? If I say run, you run. If I say hide, you hide. I promise. She softened, moving into his arms. Together, remember? His embrace tightened. Together, they departed before dawn. The wagon loaded with goods to trade. Preserved foods, leather goods, and 3 crates of Marguerite's confections that had become legendary throughout the territory. Maria blessed them with prayers in Spanish and pressed a small bottle of whiskey into Cole's hands. For warmth, she said firmly, and for courage. The journey was brutal from the first mile. Wind cut through even their heaviest clothing, and the wagon wheels fought for purchase in snow-packed ruts. Cole drove with a grim determination, his body a shield against the elements, while Marguerite huddled under blankets and tried to keep feeling in her fingers. On the second day, as they navigated a narrow mountain pass, disaster struck. The wagon wheel hit a hidden rock, and the violent jolt sent them careening toward the edge of the trail. Cole hauled on the reins with superhuman strength, muscles straining as he fought to control the panicked horses. Marguerite grabbed the seat rail, watching in horror as the right wheels lifted off the ground, teetering over a drop that disappeared into white oblivion. Don't move, Cole's command cracked like a whip. For an endless moment they hung there, balanced between survival and death. Then, with agonizing slowness, the wagon settled back onto all 4 wheels. Cole didn't speak. He simply guided the horses forward until they reached wider ground, then stopped and climbed down. Marguerite followed on trembling legs. The wheel, he said tightly, crouching to examine it. Cracked. We need to repair it before we can continue. Can you fix it? Have to. He pulled tools from the wagon bed, his hands already red with cold. Going to take hours. Get back in the wagon. Stay warm. I'm helping. Marguerite, this isn't... Don't. She knelt beside him, her smaller hands reaching for the wheel. Show me what to do. They worked together as the short winter day bled toward darkness. Cole directed her as he reinforced the wheel with spare wood and iron, his instructions terse but clear. Her fingers went numb, then painful, then numb again. But she didn't complain. She held pieces steady while he hammered, fetched tools when he needed them, and learned the basics of wagon repair through brutal necessity. When they finally finished, night had fallen completely. Cole built a small fire using precious fuel, and they huddled close to its meager warmth. "You did good today," he said quietly, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "Better than good. Most women would have panicked." "I'm not most women," her teeth chattered despite the fire. "And I told you, I'm not fragile." He pulled her against his chest, sharing body heat. "No, you're steel wrapped in sweetness, strongest woman I've ever known." They slept sitting up, wrapped around each other, the fire dying to embers as the temperature plummeted. In the darkest hour before dawn, Marguerite woke to find Cole shivering violently, his breathing shallow. "Cole?" Fear spiked through her. "Cole, wake up!" He responded sluggishly, his skin too cold, his movements uncoordinated. Hypothermia. She'd heard stories of men dying this way, their bodies simply giving up against the cold. Terror gave her strength. She pulled him fully into the wagon bed, surrounding him with every blanket they possessed. She stripped off his frozen outer layers with shaking hands, then pressed her body against his, skin to skin, using her warmth to combat the killing cold. "Stay with me," she whispered fiercely, rubbing his arms and chest, trying to stimulate circulation. "Don't you dare leave me, Cole Callahan. We survived too much to die on this mountain." She talked to him through the endless hours of darkness, telling him stories of their future, children they'd raise, springs they'd see, anniversaries they'd celebrate. She sang every song she could remember, her voice cracking with cold and fear. She prayed to a God she wasn't sure believed in her, bargaining everything she had for his survival. As dawn finally broke, his eyes opened. Awareness returned slowly, and with it, understanding of how she'd saved him. "You could have frozen yourself," he rasped, his voice raw. "Wasn't going to happen." She pressed her forehead to his, tears freezing on her cheeks. "I need you, you stubborn man. Need you like breathing." "Margaret." His arms came around her with returning strength. "I love you. God, I love you." They held each other as morning painted the snow gold and pink. Two people who'd stared death in the face and chosen each other instead. When Cole was strong enough to travel, they pressed on. The remaining journey passed without incident, and they reached Cheyenne 3 days behind schedule, but alive. The town was a revelation, bustling even in winter's grip, with electric lights that made Margaret gasp, and buildings that towered 3 stories high. Cole conducted business with suppliers while Marguerite negotiated with a confectionery shop owner, a shrewd woman named Patricia, who tasted one caramel and immediately ordered every piece Marguerite could produce. "These are exceptional," Patricia declared, her eyes sharp with business acumen. "I'll take your entire inventory now and commission regular shipments. Name your price." Marguerite named a figure that made Cole's eyebrows rise. Patricia didn't blink. "Done. I'll also introduce you to my contacts in Denver and San Francisco. Your work deserves a wider market." That night, in a hotel room that felt impossibly luxurious after the trail, Cole pulled Marguerite onto the bed with hungry reverence. "You're amazing," he murmured against her throat. "The way you negotiated today. You didn't just sell confections. You built an empire, our empire." She tugged him closer, need rising hot despite her exhaustion. "Everything I build is ours, Cole. Together." He made love to her with slow intensity, relearning every curve and hollow, celebrating their survival and their partnership. When she cried out his name, it was both prayer and proclamation. The return journey was easier, the wagon loaded with supplies and their pockets heavy with profit. But as they approached the ranch, they saw smoke. Too much smoke, billowing black against the gray sky. Cole urged the horses to a gallop, fear etched in every line of his body. They crested the final hill to find chaos. The main barn was engulfed in flames, ranch hands forming bucket brigades, while others herded panicked livestock away from danger. Maria stood in the yard, directing traffic with fierce authority, despite tears streaming down her face. "What happened?" Cole demanded, leaping from the wagon. "Lightning strike," one of the hands gasped between buckets. 3 hours ago. We've been fighting it ever since." Cole dove into the effort without hesitation, and Marguerite joined him. They fought the fire until their lungs burned with smoke and their muscles screamed with exhaustion. They saved the house and most of the outbuildings, but the barn was a total loss, taking with it a winter's worth of hay and feed. That night, covered in soot and ash, they surveyed the damage. Cole stood silent, and Marguerite saw the weight of near defeat in his shoulders. "We'll rebuild," she said firmly. "With what money?" "The supplies we just bought were all our savings. The barn will cost thousands to replace, and without that hay," his voice cracked, "might lose the ranch, Marguerite. Might lose everything." "No." She turned him to face her, her hands filthy, but her grip iron strong. "We have something more valuable than money. We have each other. We have our people, and I just secured contracts that will bring steady income. We'll rebuild, one day at a time, together." He pulled her into a crushing embrace, this strong man who'd forgotten how to lean on anyone. "Don't know what I'd do without you. Good thing you'll never have to find out." The spring of 1879 brought transformation. Using Marguerite's confection earnings and loans from impressed Cheyenne businessmen, they rebuilt the barn, bigger and better than before. Patricia's connections meant Marguerite's sweets reached markets across 3 territories, and her business grew from side venture to legitimate enterprise. But success brought new challenges. "You should move operations to Cheyenne," Patricia suggested during one of her visits to the ranch. "Set up a proper confectionery, hire employees, scale production. You're limiting yourself out here in the wilderness." Marguerite glanced at Cole, who stood nearby, ostensibly checking fence line, but clearly listening. His face was carefully neutral, but she knew him well enough to see the tension. "This is my home," she said carefully. "My business is important, but it's not everything. Think about it." Patricia pressed a business proposal into her hands. "The offer stands. You have real talent, Marguerite. Don't waste it making candy for cowboys." After Patricia left, Cole was quiet through dinner. Finally, in their bedroom, he spoke. "You should consider it." "What?" She turned from brushing her hair, stunned. "The Cheyenne opportunity. It's smart business. You'd reach more customers, make more money. And leave you? Leave our home?" She set down the brush with enough force to make him flinch. "Is that what you want?" "I want you to have everything you deserve." His jaw tightened. "I want you to have choices, not be trapped out here because of me." Understanding crashed over her. "You think I'm trapped? Aren't you? You had a shop in San Francisco, a city life. Now you're stuck on a ranch in the middle of nowhere, working yourself to exhaustion. I chose this." The words came out fierce. "Every single day, I choose you. I choose this life. Not because I'm trapped, but because it's where I want to be." She crossed to him, cupping his scarred face. "Cole Callahan, you saved me. Not just from Blackwood, but from a life where I was surviving but not living. You taught me I could be strong and soft, successful and in love. I don't need Cheyenne. I need you." His control shattered. He pulled her close, his face buried in her neck. "I'm so afraid of failing you. The only way you could fail me is by pushing me away. She threaded her fingers through his hair. We're partners, remember? Your dreams are mine. My success is yours. That's what marriage means. I love you, he whispered. God, I love you so much, it terrifies me. Then be terrified with me. Because I love you just as much, and I'm staying right here, together. They sealed the promise with kisses that turned heated, tumbling into bed with the desperate passion of two people who'd almost lost each other too many times. Afterward, tangled in sheets and moonlight, Cole traced patterns on her bare shoulder. What if we expanded here instead? He said thoughtfully. Built a confectionery workshop on the ranch. You could train local women, create jobs, produce more without leaving. We could ship products from here. Marguerite's breath caught. You do that? Invest in my business that way? It's our business. Everything we have is ours. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Besides, I like watching you create. Selfish reasons. She laughed, joy bubbling up. That's the most romantic business proposal I've ever heard. That a yes? That's a hell yes. By summer, the Callahan Ranch Confectionery was reality. A dedicated building where Marguerite trained 6 local women in the art of candy making. Production tripled, quality remained exceptional, and the enterprise became the territory's largest employer of women. Cole watched his wife thrive with pride that swelled his chest. She'd transformed from desperate refugee to successful businesswoman, and she'd done it without losing the softness that had drawn him from the first. She still made him special treats, still looked at him with eyes full of love, still whispered together when life got hard. One evening, as he helped her close up the workshop, she turned to him with a particular smile he'd learned to recognize. I have news. Good news or bad news? Depends on how you feel about children. His heart stopped. Marguerite, are you pregnant? About 3 months along, the doctor thinks. She took his hand, placing it on her still flat stomach. We're going to have a baby, Cole. He couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The last time he'd heard these words, it had ended in tragedy. Catherine and their unborn child lost to illness, leaving him shattered and alone. Cole? Marguerite's smile faltered. Say something, please. I'm terrified, he admitted roughly. Last time, what if something happens to you? What if I lose you like I lost Catherine? You won't. She guided his trembling hand to her heart. Feel that? I'm strong, Cole. Stronger than I ever was, because you helped me become that. And we'll face this together, like everything else. Together, he echoed, and finally let himself believe it. Let himself hope that this time, love wouldn't end in loss. Together, she confirmed, pulling him down for a kiss that tasted like joy and promise and the sweetness of a future they'd built from nothing. The autumn of 1879 painted the prairie in gold and rust, and Marguerite's belly swelled with life. Cole became impossibly protective, hovering until she threatened to ban him from the house. I'm pregnant, not dying, she'd say with exasperated affection, though secretly she loved his attentiveness. But as winter approached again, complications arose. Marguerite woke one night to cramping pain and the wetness of blood. Terror gripped her as Cole raced for the doctor, his face pale as death in the lamplight. Morrison arrived within the hour, examining her with practiced efficiency while Cole paced like a caged wolf. She needs bed rest, the doctor announced. Complete bed rest for the remainder of the pregnancy, or you'll lose the child. How long? Marguerite asked, her voice small. 3 months minimum. No work, no stress, minimal activity. For a woman who'd built her identity on strength and productivity, the sentence felt like death. But when she looked at Cole's anguished face, She knew she'd endure anything to give him the family he'd lost once before. The months that followed tested them both. Marguerite chafed against confinement, frustrated by her body's betrayal. Cole struggled to balance running the ranch, managing her business, and keeping her spirits up. "I'm useless," she said one particularly dark day, tears streaming down her face. "Can't work, can't help, can't do anything but lie here growing fat." "Stop." Cole climbed into bed beside her, pulling her carefully against his chest. "You're growing our child. You're doing the most important work there is. And you're not useless. You're the reason I get up every morning, the reason any of this matters. I hate being weak. You're not weak. You're sacrificing everything you are to give our baby a chance at life. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen." She cried against his shoulder, and he held her through it. This man who'd learned that strength sometimes meant simply being present. Maria took over the confectionery with surprising skill, and the business didn't just survive, it flourished. The ranch hands took turns sitting with Marguerite, reading to her or playing cards, refusing to let her sink into isolation. And Cole was there every night, holding her, talking to their unborn child, reminding her that she was loved beyond measure. On a frigid February morning in 1880, Marguerite's water broke. The labor was long and brutal, testing every ounce of her strength. Cole stayed by her side through all of it, letting her crush his hands, whispering encouragement when she wanted to quit. "You can do this," he said fiercely, when she sobbed that she couldn't. "You're the strongest person I know. You survived Blackwood. You survived the mountain. You'll survive this. Together." "Together," she gasped, and pushed with everything she had left. Their daughter entered the world with a lusty cry that made the doctor laugh with relief. Cole cut the cord with shaking hands, tears streaming down his scarred face as he held his child for the first time. "She's perfect," he whispered reverently. "Marguerite, she's perfect." They named her Catherine Rose, honoring the past while celebrating the present. Cole's first wife would never be forgotten, but she was part of their story, not its ending. As Marguerite nursed their daughter in the quiet hours after dawn, Cole stretched out beside them, his large hand covering both of theirs. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for giving me this, for not giving up, even when it was hard." "We did it together," she corrected, smiling down at the tiny face, already showing signs of her father's stubborn jaw. "Everything good we have, we built together." "Together," he agreed, and in that word was everything. Past and present, sorrow and joy. All the ways two broken people had found wholeness in each other. The years that followed brought growth and prosperity. The Callahan Ranch expanded to 3,000 acres. The confectionery employed 20 women and shipped products nationwide. And Catherine Rose grew into a fierce, loving child who worshipped her father and learned candy making from her mother. When their son James arrived 2 years later, Cole had mastered the art of fatherhood, changing diapers with the same efficiency he showed breaking horses, telling bedtime stories with gravitas that made even fairy tales sound epic. On quiet evenings, after the children slept, Marguerite and Cole would sit on their porch, overlooking the prairie they'd nearly died crossing. And remember, "Do you ever regret it?" she asked one night, taking in that desperate woman with nothing but 3 caramels to her name. Cole pulled her close, his kiss landing on her temple. "Best decision of my life. You brought sweetness back when I thought I'd lost the taste for it forever. And you showed me I could be strong and soft at the same time. That needing someone doesn't make you weak. We saved each other. We did. She settled against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. And we'll keep saving each other, every day for the rest of our lives. Promise? He asked, the word playful, but with real question underneath. Promise. She tilted her face up for his kiss. Now and forever. Together. Together, he agreed, and in the vast Wyoming darkness, under stars that had witnessed their struggle and triumph, their love proved that the sweetest things in life were worth fighting for, worth sacrificing for, worth building a life around. And every night, before bed, Marguerite would make Cole one perfect caramel. He'd savor it slowly, the way she'd begged him to that desperate first night. And remember that salvation sometimes comes wrapped in the smallest, sweetest packages. From nothing, they'd built everything. From desperation, they'd found joy. From two broken hearts, they'd created a love that would outlast them both. A legacy of sweetness in a hard land. Proof that even in the wilderness, tenderness could not just survive, but thrive. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Marguerite and Cole's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.